Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I want to talk about a life lesson that I learned, and I learned it quite indirectly actually. So I've been following this blackjack card counter. His name is Colin. He hosts a channel called Blackjack Apprenticeship. Now, I'll probably never count cards. For one thing, most casinos, especially the good ones, still allow smoking. And also, just given his material, I don't think it is for me. But I love the math behind it. Now, Colin often talks about expected value in the long run, and how to not get discouraged by the short-term fluctuations, which he calls variance. That's good advice for investing in bismuth or silver anyhow, right? There's a lot of variance, right? You never want to watch how the bismuth you bought last week did, right? You never want to watch that, right? That's the quickest way to lose your shirt, right? And he talks about getting to the long run. And he's had some pretty impressive losing streaks, right? To the point that everybody watching him probably thinks he's a problem gambler, right? He talks about how he and his team had a losing streak that was $500,000 from front to end, but when he zoomed out, you couldn't even see that losing streak, right? He and his team has made about $4 million, and it inspired me to write some AI to see if we can improve upon that card counting scheme, right? So I wrote a AI for perfect card counting, assuming you can memorize every single card in the deck. Obviously, nobody's going to be able to do that, and the network for that is going to be incalculable in your head anyway. But the goal is to see if we can find coefficients that can match to that as best as possible. Where right now he does a high-low count, where the 2s through 6s count as +1. The 10s and aces count as -1. I think you can improve upon that a little bit. I'm working on that. Just as a fun project. I'll probably never actually implement this in a casino. Right? Okay. But what I really loved is his definition of EV in the long run, because something happened to me last year that really ate at me, and now looking back at it, it was just a blip. I have been programming AI for various board games. Let me see if I can find one of my board game sets here. Ticket to Ride. This is the New York version. I moved to Phoenix about a year and a half ago, and I ever since moving here, my first year here, I had a lot of hard time making friends, and I'll get to why I had such a hard time in a moment. And so I couldn't find anybody to play the Ticket to Ride games with me, or any other game. I tried to program Splendor, I tried to program Euchre, International Checkers, which is one that I've been working on for over a decade now, but I keep finding new and better ways to do it. Backgammon, obviously. Backgammon, I can find opponents. The problem is that everybody wants to gamble in backgammon, and I'm not objecting to gambling or anything, but it's outside of my budget, right? And so, for example, I already won the beginner division of backgammon. I can't compete in the beginners anymore. The intermediate division, they run at $200 a tournament, and they boast all these big prizes. I think the intermediate division, first place gets, I think it was a 4-digit number at least. I don't need that kind of money. What I need is more chances to play. It's very frustrating that everybody just wants to gamble. Yeah. And so anyways, the long story short is I couldn't find any opponents, and I ended up in a serious mental health crisis over this. And the truth is that I started doing better at the turn of the year because I was watching the Blackjack Apprenticeship and Colin was talking about EV, and then it hit me. Every time I ask somebody, either at the board game meetup or I'm just casually talking to my colleague at work, and I say, hey, can we play this during the lunch break? You know, I'm programming AI. Would you like to learn a new game? And oftentimes the answer would be no, right? They're busy with something. I used to take that very personally, but ever since I learned EV with Colin, I learned that every time I ask, there's a chance that somebody might play. It might be 10%, it might be 5%, but that's an EV, right? That's like Colin going into his year-long losing streak where he loses $500,000. He's getting closer and closer to the long run. When you zoomed out of that $500,000 loss, you could barely see it on that upward sloping curve, right? And it actually, it was more like an exponential curve because the more money he had, the bigger his bet spread started to get, right? And so I've learned every time I ask to pretend that it accounts for 1/10 of a game, which is roughly how it's been, I would say. And similarly for anything else, or every time you ask a girl on a date, pretend that equals like some fraction of a date. Right? I'll let you calculate what that fraction might be. Or every time you try some new hobby, right? Oh, the bismuth crystals, that's my favorite one. I don't always get a good pour, right? When you see those geodes that I hang on the wall at the art studio, every one of them probably took 4 or 5 attempts, right? And there were definitely losing streaks where I poured 50 losers into it. Definitely. I can't tell you how many times I would set up on a Friday night, and before I knew it was Sunday afternoon. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept, I smelled like crazy. Sometimes, because I didn't even want to turn off the furnace, sometimes I would even take a large bucket to urinate into. And it was borderline insanity, if you will. It was kind of like a gambling addiction, because when you poured something good, you wanted to do it again and again and again and again. And when it wasn't good, you were kind of chasing your losses. It kind of did feel like that. But the more I poured, sometimes I would look back on Sunday afternoon when I'm just about to crash, and I look at how many geodes I have. Sometimes even I was in disbelief about that. Now, one thing I do want to resolve before we get to next month. I'm a little bit anxious about spring break next month because ever since I started teaching for Maricopa colleges, during the part of the reason I got into a mental health jam was it was Thanksgiving break, and I didn't know what to do with myself. It was like I was lost and confused with no work to go to, and at the time I was living in a situation where I couldn't make the bismuth crystals, or even if I could, I still feel lost and confused. Just nowhere to go, especially because it's Thanksgiving and my favorite restaurant's not open as well. It was just really frustrating. I'd much rather have a day off here and a day off there. Right, a better idea, and I've sent proposals to about this before, is get rid of all the holidays. Add up however many days those are, and let people take off when it makes sense for them to take off, right? But unfortunately, we got spring break coming up. I'll see if I can look for some gig work during that week. Long breaks like that also have a tendency to wreck my sleep schedule and eating habits as well. There's no regimen to follow, and it's easy to develop really bad habits. Overeating, masturbating, and of sleep disorder. It's very easy to relapse into all sorts of shit like that. And it almost actually, to be honest, the Thanksgiving, Christmas break last year felt worse than quarantine. And it's really tragic because as bad as Thanksgiving and Christmas break feel, the rest of the year I'm burnt out. I wish we could average that out a little bit, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.